Let's look at this trend, which has been of concern to the Central Bank of Nigeria. In fact, a circular has to be issued in that regard recently, which is not the first time. The use of dollars and foreign currencies for domestic transactions in Nigeria, in spite of the fact that the CBN has maintained severally that the Naira remains legal tender, but you have this preference for foreign currencies in Nigeria. Talk to us. Why do you think you have this kind of development? How did we get here?
Well, personally, I don't share that perspective. I know there are few businesses that like to collect dollars. I think it is the responsibility of the regulatory authority to make sure that transactions are done in the legal tender of our country. So whether some people do dollar transaction, I think it will be a failure on the part of the Central Bank of Nigeria and all the allied agencies that are responsible within the monetary framework regime of the country. So I don't see any reason. I've been to other climes, I don't want to mention country-specific term, where you make transactions and you even have dollar option. They will always ask you to convert your dollars into the local currency to initiate your transaction. So I don't know why it should be different here. So if the central bank of Nigeria feel that this is the issues, I think they should find a way to track down those who do transactions in dollars, so that that can serve as a deterrent to people who demand foreign exchange to do local transactions. Those are my personal views.
All right, apart from the official channel when people want to make transactions paying with dollars, there's also been the trend of spraying dollars at parties, even parties done within the country. Now, this high demand for the use of the dollar, do you find it associated with a class thing other than a means of transaction or a legal tender issue?
For people spraying money at parties, there's some cultural imperative when it comes to, but then the central bank in the recent time with the EFCC have often said that it's not necessary to spray those kind of money. But then if there's a regulatory framework in place, I think those agencies should find a way. I understand, I read in the paper recently that somebody was sentenced to sentence for spraying dollars. I don't know how true is that, but well, socially, yes, maybe it can be a class thing depending on the perspective or which you are looking at it. But I think it's just a cultural thing that people spray money at parties. But then we should frown at spraying foreign money in our local party. If you must spray money, it should be our local currency. If you are culturally banned to do those kind of stuff in parties. But then if the government say is not good, then I think we should stop that. Why can't you just put money in an envelope and hand it over to the people at the party? I think that's more dignifying in my view.
Don't you think, if you look at the exchange rate of the dollar to a Naira, for instance, you know, you can guess the figure, which I don't want to talk about it now, but if you look at the exchange rate of Naira to dollar, wouldn't it be a difficult task for the CBN to curb this trend if looking at the exchange rates and the kind of value you get when you store your assets in these foreign currencies? Don't you think it would be a tough one for CBN to curb this trend and stop Nigerians from, you know, patronizing or putting pressure on the Nairas, demanding?
If I understand you correctly, storing your money in dollars vis-a-vis using your money as a local currency.
Looking at the
I don't
exchange
really
rates
get
and other foreign currencies, looking at the exchange rate, the value now compared to Naira.
Would that make people demand for foreign currency in terms of local transaction? Is that the question?
Yes. Wouldn't that be a tough one for the CBN
No, I don't
to
think
cover
so.
if that is a reality to live
You have
with?
opportunities of people having a domiciliary account where they can earn money from abroad and those monies are in dorm account. But those money, once they leave the domiciliary account for local transaction, they should be converted to local money for that exchange, irrespective of whatever the exchange as it is as of today. So if the government say you are allowed to have a DOM account where you have foreign currency in your account, but if you must use those currency for local transaction, then they must be converted into the local currency.
Let me add this. Are you aware there are employees who earn their salaries in dollars in Nigeria?
If they are expatriate workers, it depends on how those
Some
salaries...
of them are not.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. That would be against the Nigerian labor law, and the Ministry of Labor and Productivity must close in on those companies as quickly as possible. But if you are employed as an expatriate worker, you're working as an expatriate worker, then you're paid in your currency. But then if you must spend those money, you need to convert those money to the local currency to spend.
All right. To rephrase, because when Femi was talking about people leaving their money denominated in dollars, it's become like a trend right now where it seemed like an investment plan or an inflation-proof plan where people choose to save in dollars rather than save in Naira. Is that putting some strain on the dollar in terms of increasing the demand?
I don't think so. How many people can really save in dollars? If you look at the ratio, the population, I don't think so, even though there are no basic statistics to defend that position. How many people really can save in dollar? That's a million naira question. Nevertheless, those who have the capacity to save with an investment option, if they have the capacity to save in dollars, why not? But my submission this morning is that even if you have your money in dollars and you must spend them within the domestic environment, then you must convert those monies to spend in Naira. So there's nothing wrong if you have an investment option that is dominated in dollars, but when you earn your money, once it comes into the local jurisdiction, then you convert your money and spend in the local, unless you're doing a foreign exchange transaction where you need to transfer money by dollar, and then the bank within those framework can earn their own commission, and that money still remain within the domestic environment.
Talking about converting, now when people want to convert to the local currency, the first point of call now is the Bureau de Change operator or those who exchange currencies along the streets. So for the Abuja Bureau de Change operators saying they're shutting down, how much of impact do you see that having? Do you see it becoming a nationwide thing where from Abuja, those in Lagos, those in other states begin to shut down because there isn't enough forex to continue business?
Well, I'll look at that from two perspectives. First, if they are trying to shut down their operation, that would be a business decision that they are making. So if they think it's in their best interest to shut down their operation, so may it be.
Wouldn't it have
on the other
implication?
hand, no, I'm just trying to make a point.
Okay.
There is a business decision, so if they want to shut down, that's their own personal. On the other hand, is it a threat to the government that if they shut down, then the pressure on the dollar will become more problematic to the point that maybe they will beg them to come back to. The argument is neither here or there. So if they make a decision, if they think it's in their business interest, let them shut down. And maybe that will help to close the gap. I don't know, with the floating rate that currently exists, if they choose not to operate, where the central bank should just withdraw their license, and let's see whether that can help. These are my personal views for now.
All right, let me point your attention to the provision of the CBN Act as regards this. I'll go to section 20, subsection 5, which say, forbids anyone from refusing to accept the Naira as a means of payment. Shall, the word shall was used, shall be guilty of an offense and liable in conviction to a fine of 50,000 Naira or 6 months imprisonment. Don't you think this just looked like a slap in the wrist?
I don't think so. Maybe at the time that law was made, 50,000 must be a lot of money. So what we should be clamoring for at this particular point in time, to what extent can we review that provision of the law and put the option to a bigger decision in terms of what you pay vis-a-vis the fine option. But to what extent has the central bank be able to use this instrument to punish people so that it can serve as a deterrent? So I think that should be the conversation, that should be the narrative. 50,000, yes, small, but then we can review that so that the amount of fine that you pay can be increased. Then people should be sent to jail. If I was a judge sitting, I would prefer the option of jail rather than the option of fine, so that people can spend their money. And that was the point I was speaking to, that if the regulatory framework is there, to what extent do we use this law? And I think that's the challenge that we have in our environment. We have the laws, but to what extent do we use the law to correct the anomalies in the society?
All right, talking about using laws to correct anomalies, some time ago, the CBN used to supply British exchange operators with Forex. So once that stopped, they had to source theirs. And we've seen how much of impact that policy has had. But at a time like this, in spite of looting the Naira and even the BDCs still struggling to get Forex, do you think it is about time to revisit that policy?
I think beyond the policy framework, I think I was speaking elsewhere recently in this station about the propensity for imported items. And this is why we're struggling so much. And I think we need to change our spending by buying locally made products. That will reduce the stress on the dollar. I think these are conversations that will more sustain as citizens. Let's see how we can patronize made in Nigerian goods so that this penchant for foreign imported item that put a strain on this exchange regime can be reduced minimally, in my view.
But does Nigeria have enough local substitutes for many of the products it imports?
We do have. It's an orientation issue. It's not that you can close your border completely in terms of imported item, but there are certain things that you bring into the country, strangely to me, that are not necessary. I hear that people make soups, Nigerian soups elsewhere, and they are being imported back into Nigeria. That sounds funny, but these are serious things that we must frown out.